You are now listening to the El Segundo podcast with...
Who? Craig Jones. Who? Craig Jones.
And having that guy around is the best thing that ever happened for the squad.
Welcome back to El Segundo, episode 23. Fresh off of, man, I don't know how long. Honestly, I think it was 13 days in Vegas. 13 days of nothing but nose beers, debauchery, a little bit of training. But yeah, mostly some debauchery that we can never speak about publicly on the air. But let's sort of kick it off with what brought me to Vegas. I got to Vegas, yes, so 14 days ago exactly. We got there on the Monday. Me, Nickal, Hyson, we went there for the UFC Fight Pass Invitational. I pulled in super sick. I caught a cold, and it's funny I was sick because it'll make more sense of the my press conference behavior straight after the event. But yeah, we've already sort of spoken about the Fight Pass Invitational, but again, I went in there against Felipe Pena. We had the main event. Despite what some people were calling the main event, I indeed was the main event. But yeah, the match was pretty, the get down rule was fucked. So obviously after 60 seconds on the feet wrestling, you do a coin toss and basically pick top or bottom. We were both pretty non-committal on the feet. Philippe's got a good guillotine. He's guillotined Lucas Barbosa before. I feel like I could guillotine him if he took a bad shot. The stage was elevated, so most of the time I got 2 or 3 clean shots on him. Yeah. One particular, I got his leg up real high. I thought for sure I would have taken him down off that, but I mean, we are friends, we like each other. That was a large drop off there, so it's better to just pull the takedown a bit. Again, who's to know whether I would have got him down, but yeah, definitely you got to pull it. You're not going to take him off the platform. That's something I spoke about with the UFC when we had a meeting about how we could, what we could do to sort of contain the grappling in such a tight space. Because again, in wrestling, if you step backwards, you're going to get a penalty. In grappling, it's hard to shoot on someone moving backwards. So especially if there's a stage behind, as soon as you're near the edge, it's like, what are you going to do there? But yeah, Philippe, I had a feeling the match would be decided in overtime. I saw he weighed in 225 the day before. I was 210 in shoes, but honestly, I was probably closer to 200 pounds, especially I'd been in Vegas for 3 days already, not eating, just doing horrible things to my body. So it was a big weight discrepancy there. I remember I trained with Philippe before the Gordon match, and he was 235, massive traps. So I was like, I remember when we negotiated the match, I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Just don't come in heavier than 225 sort of on the day. But then he weighed in at 225 on the dot. So I imagine he was still over 230 on match day. So that really sort of changed the strategy. 12-minute match. They wanted 25 minutes. I said, no, 25 is far too long. I can't do anything for 25 minutes. And so really, you don't want a guy on top of you with a 20, 25, 30-pound weight advantage for 12 minutes. You're going to be exhausted. I have pacing issues, as you saw in the Marigali match. So we had to sort of pace ourselves in this match. But again, I felt like I had the advantage in overtime. I believe Philippe probably thought I had the advantage in overtime because of experience. So in that sense, I felt like Philippe probably should have taken more risks in regulation. But really, he was kind of happy to chill to overtime too. Overtime, I got out immediately for the first round, and then we both held out each other's backs for the full duration. I was hoping during the third round, like I'd already won. I just had to hold his back for like 10, 15 seconds. I thought Victor Davila was gonna call it as soon as we held it for 15. We almost rolled off the mats and stuff, and I was just like, usually when you're the last person to go, they're gonna stop it at the time you should have already won the match. But for some reason, Victor Davila made me hold Philippe's back for the full 60 seconds of the last round, so I don't know if that's something in the rules, slipped his mind, whatever. But yeah, obviously I was talking about how that match puts me as pound for pound number 1, which is a cool position to be, pound for pound best grappler in the world. And again, cornering the pound for pound best MMA fighter in the world. So we make a good team there. But I wasn't the only one that competed from the team. We had Nicky Rod. Nicky Rod battles against Roberto Jimenez, interesting character. Big fan of CMOS. J-Rod too, strangely. J-Rod was talking a lot about CMOS. We were concerned that maybe he was talking about C-Man, but CMOS, he came to us with a jar after the match. We all take things before a match to give ourselves a little bit of boost. I don't know if CMOS is going to do the trick for me. But Nicky Rod, yeah, he had some tough matches. Roberto Jimenez, incredible. I think Roberto's probably the best close guard in the world. He even did some good wrestling exchanges with Nicky Rod. Who did Nicky Rod face second round?
Wagner Rocha.
Wagner, yeah. So Wagner's a guy that will talk shit to you. He'll slap you. He'll poke you in the eyes.
Fucking headbutt you and shit.
He'll headbutt you. And then afterwards he'll be like, aren't we friends? And you're like, no. Why would I be friends? Like, just grapple, you fucking arsehole. You know what I mean? Like, you have to do the dodgy to win. Is it going to be really a victory anyway? But it was a tough one. I think people like Wagner because he brings out people's emotions in the match. But you see Nicky Rod, no matter what happens, he never really...
Pretty cool guy. Yeah, he never really gets upset in there.
Pretty cool, calm and collected. Funny Wagner story, when I faced him at Submission Undergrad, he was talking so much shit to me during the match, but I honestly didn't understand half the things he was saying, so it didn't even bother me. He was speaking to me with that broken Brazilian English accent. I was just like, bro, I don't know what the fuck you're saying. But in the match, we've had 2 matches. Our first match at EBI, he won in overtime. I think at one stage he held my back for 10 minutes. We were there for fucking days. Yeah. Eddie changed the rules after that to limit the amount of time in overtime. Yeah. So we fucked the rules on that. But at one stage in that match, I was going for a rear naked choke with an arm in. Basically like an arm triangle version of a rear naked. And it was tight and he was gagging, but he got out of it. So then in the second match, I put him in that exact same position. And he goes, didn't work last time. And then he made a mistake and I choked him straight away. So nothing's more satisfying than choking someone as they're talking shit to you. So yeah, Nicky Rod takes out both these guys in OT. I think Nicky Rod's the best overtime guy in the world. I don't think anyone is going to be able to control him. And I mean, Big Dan Jr. Big Dan, I don't know, that's a bit of an oxymoron there, those guys refer to him as. I mean, maybe junior intellectually, but definitely he's big. He put up a photo, 291 week of the match. Nicky Rod was like 235, close to a 60-pound weight advantage there.
Jesus.
So like, that, I mean, just to put that in perspective, that would be like Jamal Hill facing off against Islam Makhachev. You know what I mean? You couldn't imagine that in an MMA situation. You couldn't imagine those guys having a wrestling match, really, with that sort of weight discrepancy there. But Nicky Rod takes him out in OT, passes his guard 3 times in regulation. And Big Dan and Nicky Rod didn't really like each other when we trained, but they had to train together because, again, we discriminate. You know, you put all the big assholes together because no one else wants to roll
What's
them.
the roll with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you discriminate against larger people of all genders, some for different purposes, but they used to hate each other, so it was a bad blood match. But being a part of DDS and stuff, if you're facing off against someone that they hate, that puts a lot of pressure on you. Big Dan's young, I'm not sure he handles the pressure too well. Like, he's gonna cop a beating after this. He's gonna get a long message. He's gonna get a message so long that obviously there's gonna be no grammar and paragraphs in there. It's gonna be tough to read.
Bunch of run-on sentences.
Yeah, he's not the king of writing despite having a book, you know, so one long-winded, angry text message you will receive. It definitely won't be face-to-face. But yeah, Nicky Rod takes him out, escapes an armbar. People talking about how bad the armbar break, they thought it was a bad break. I don't think it was a bad break because we were working on something called a reverse sort of hitchhiker, and that's something where we can turn out. You turn your thumb out for a hitchhiker, turn your thumb down for a reverse hitchhiker. It's something we worked with Volkanovski leading up to Islam match, Islam fight. I reckon it's one of the best armbar escapes out there, the reverse hitchhiker. It's so hard to finish a guy that knows how to do that escape. Something I stole from Vinny Margalesh against Fabricio Verdun back at ADCC. You're basically getting your shoulder as high off the ground as possible while turning your thumb down to make it hard to get a break. It just means they have to lift their hips high to break you. So Nicky Rod would have taken a couple pops, but I don't think he's taken a single day off.
Oh, dude, he was here on Monday after the match. Yeah, he was here training and shit. Yeah.
We even trained at the PI with Volk's crew the day after the match, despite us being extremely hungover. We got in there because I guess that's what champions do. You know, we're a championship team here. We're the A team now. That's what we do. But yeah, what can I talk about the Fight Pass? I mean, despite us winning, the highlight of the entire event was the argument between Heidi from the UFC and Mr. Authenticity himself. So I mean, she navigates the athletes. She's one of the UFC's best employees. Yeah. She's with the whole traveling circus that go around to every event. And again, we have some egos in the sport, obviously, but they pale in comparison to the MMA stars that exist. And she has to navigate those guys. So when Marigali was mouthing off to her, trying to walk in an area where our guy was about to do his walk out, his entrance to the Apex, she gets into an argument. Well, he tries to argue with her, thinking that she's just going to be like, oh, holy shit, this is Mr. Authenticity, Nickal Marigali himself. And he just gets absolutely shut down. And that, to me, was a highlight of the entire event. I mean, as much as they are my old team, they are the villains in this sport, and there's a reason for that. If you talk to promoters, very difficult to deal with. We're dealing with prima donnas here, and that's just, again, that's the highlight of the entire event. That was fucking absolutely hilarious to me. That, and also Gordon's $500 bet against anyone that could beat me and Nicky Rod. Massive $500 bet. Yeah. Obviously, the book sales have gone through the roof for him to be able to contribute that much into our opponents' bank accounts. Luckily, neither of us lost, and he didn't have to send any money away. We had high some lose, but that was clarified on the post that he doesn't dislike Ison. So the Russian kid that got his leg broken doesn't get any $500 ruble bonus, unfortunately. But yeah, Fight Pass was awesome to work for. It was cool to be in the Apex. Steven Teshi and the team put on an excellent show. And I know around the time, you only brought this to my attention today, but another New Wave guy called me out. He was highlighting the South African victory over the Australian rugby team. Again, Australia, we mostly play AFL. I'm not a big rugby guy.
I don't even know what that is.
But I will say this about the Luke Griffiths New Wave call out. If your coach calls you junior, don't call me out. Those are the rules, right? I'm not taking on a junior, that's crazy. Yeah. And again, all the juniors on the New Wave team are 250 pounds and above. That's just absolutely come on, Luke, junior. You can't call me out, mate. We can't do it. You're talking to the number 1 pound grappler in the world. And if your coach calls you junior, that's not a foul. That's an imbalance there. But yeah, I've spoken to Luke a few times. He is a cool guy. But again, I can't take on a junior out of just the self-respect I have for myself. For me to take on a junior of a team would be absolutely outrageous. There are some potential matchups in the works, I keep talking about retirement. But I'm like a stripper at 3 a.m. If the price is right, miracles do happen. So something that can be learned in Vegas can be brought to the negotiating table. If the price is right, I'll do anything. And the offers are coming in right now. I think that's it for sort of talk about grappling shows. No. I mean, we got the boys. I'm about to travel to Zurich for a week, but we got the boys preparing. Nicky Ryan's preparing for Rene Souza, the buggy choke master. Who else we got on the card? Ethan against Dante. And we got Hysom against Philippe Pena. I believe all those matches are 15-minute matches, right? And WNO rules is basically judge's decision afterwards. People talk about what's the best rule set. If you ask me what the best rule set is, it's the rule set I can win in. So those rule sets, honestly, few and far between. But me taking on Philippe Pena and EBI rules, that's the best for me. There's certain opponents I prefer to take on in WNO rules, guys that are better than me at overtime. So that's basically how I operate now. I'm never going to be truly honest about what rule set's best. I'll just take on opponents in the rule set that best suits me. But yeah, we were in Vegas. I was, again, 13 days in Vegas. So I went, Volks flew in early, so it could be there to watch me compete. And then we had the whole fight with training camp. We had Volks weight cut. I got to train with some other UFC stars along the way. Izzy flew to town, got to train with Izzy again. got to train with Ian Gary and Leon Edwards. Both guys really impressed me. Leon, like those guys are in the same division, Leon and Ian Gary, but they feel like 2 weight divisions apart. Leon Edwards felt so strong. He felt very technically sound. I know he trains with Brad in the UK. Brad's a omoplata master. I've actually had matches against Brad before in the past. Leon Edwards impressed me as well because he's got such a crazy personality. I didn't expect him to be as technical as he was. He travels around everywhere to find the best instruction he can get. So I know he's been out in Brazil training with Felipe Pena's team. He's going to head to City Kickboxing to train with those boys. So he travels around, he tries to find the best technique, and that has really impressed me, the sort of depth of knowledge. I know I did 3 rounds with Ian Gary, kept wanting to roll more and more, but I was hungover that day, and that was about the limit for me. Again, probably hungover every day in Vegas, unfortunately. But yeah, Ian Gary had really technical questions. Just an interesting guy. Given how much he pursues and seeks out knowledge and new training partners, I think, the sky's the limit for him. Leon Edwards, we only did 1 round, but again, he felt shockingly strong and pretty damn good technically, considering he is, I guess, mostly a striker, but obviously puts a ton of time into his grappling. I believe he's going to have Colby next. I think he probably takes that out as well.
That's a crazy fucking fight.
That's going to be a big one. I hope they give that to him in the UK, give him the home crowd there so they can all boo Colby. But yeah, it'll be a tough one because Colby's gas tank's so good. He's so persistent on the takedowns, but I think he'll have trouble getting Leon down and keeping him down. Leon's grappling was super impressive.
Leon's a big guy too. Are they like close to the same size or?
No, Leon's going to have a significant size and strength advantage. And it's crazy to me because I always looked at his fight with Usman, both his fights with Usman, and I thought he was a small welterweight. Yeah. But then seeing him up close, man,
it's a big guy.
Shocks you how much some of these MMA fighters must cut. But yeah, Leon Edwards, super strong. And he was asking me some questions about how I was passing to mount. So again, all these guys are students of the game. And that can be rare sometimes at MMA because MMA fighters hate jiu-jitsu because jiu-jitsu is essentially useless in an MMA fight based on like sort of the modern rule set of MMA. But again, it's cool that some of these guys really have a keen interest in jiu-jitsu. But yeah, in terms of the fight week for Volks, it always is super stressful. And Volks is probably the most relaxed of the whole team. He's got a whole team of guys there taking care of him, and it gets stressful. We had Carl Van Roon. He was in Volks training camp, and he came to the fight and he was sparring with them. Carl was basically, I think, 11, 12-time Taekwondo world champion. So he really had a keen understanding of everything that Yair would do on the feet. Unfortunately, during fight week, he threw a spinning back fist, and I believe his elbow caught Volks and cut him open. Cut open Volks in an area where he has scar tissue, so it was kind of vulnerable. Yeah. But I mean, you definitely don't want to be that guy during fight week. Everyone gets very, very stressed out. But Volks took it like a champ. I think he had to get 5 stitches in there.
Oh shit!
And they pulled out the stitches on fight day. But yeah, Carl obviously felt terrible about that, but I think his expertise leading up to the fight was, incredible. Because it was crazy for me to be able to, I was only in there a short period of time for this camp, but yeah, I got to see Carl and Volks sparring, working some stuff. Volks was working some taekwondo kicks and stuff during the camp, which was really cool. Carl's a super nice guy, but yeah, I think Volks puts a lot of effort into getting the right guys for the job, you know what I mean? Like, so although he trains Joe Lopez freestyle, he brings in the right sparring partners that can replicate his opponents or at least break down his opponent's complete game plans. And Carl, again, 11-time Taekwondo world champion. I think there was some sort of reason he couldn't go to the Olympics for Taekwondo, but he's kind of widely recognized as the best Taekwondo guy in the game. The whole corner we had was there, obviously, fight week. We had Eugene Behrman. He was there to both corner Dan Hooker and Volkanovski. The stuff the way he breaks down opponents is crazy. Absolutely crazy. He spends so much time studying instructionals, studying tape. Again, it's no accident, the sort of fighters he produces. And Frank Hickman in the corner as wrestling coach, obviously he must have cornered close to 10 title fights now. So he's got so much experience, and he's the perfect training partner for Volks. Those guys go at it wrestling-wise, leading up to the fight. But when we were breaking down Yair, it's interesting because Islam is completely the opposite. I've been saying this all camp. He's a complete opposite fighter to Yair. So, and that it was a short turnaround. So obviously he faced Islam back in February, turns it around and fights Yair in just now in July. And again, complete opposite game plan. Obviously working counter wrestling, get ups, and takedown defense, right?
Yeah.
And then when we have to prepare for Yair, we're working a very dangerous guard, obviously on the feet, crazy
Strike,
kicks.
yeah.
And a guy that's super active, super aggressive, super unpredictable. I would say Islam is a very, very safe, low-risk fighter, whereas Yair, wherever he is, he's very dangerous and high risk. And it's crazy because if you get on top of Yair, you see the mistakes guys like Josh Emmett made, where they got to close guard and they just settled. And this is something we really worked on. It was your positioning of your head in relation to your opponent's head. Because Yair, you have to worry about his guard, his submissions. But if you sink down too low on the hips to control his hips, prevent his hips moving, he's just going to throw crazy elbows. Yeah. And then if you posture out of position and start to stand up, he's going to throw up kicks. So we had to navigate all that. Again, complete opposite to Islam. It's just such a wild thing. It shows Volk's confidence in his fighting ability. He kind of just saw Yair, again, he kept saying he's going to squash him. He saw Yair as just a minor hurdle until he goes back to take on Islam. He wants that Islam fight like crazy. But yeah, a lot of the stuff we worked on in this fight, I don't want to give too much of the game plan away. You guys will be able to analyze it if you rewatch the fight. Obviously on the feet, tons of switching stances to interfere with the way Yair could play his sort of taekwondo style. But on the ground and stuff, we had to come up with a way to negate his guard. And one little secret I'll give away is if you look at the first round, he pulls him to the cage and he uses the can opener. Can opener is something that if you do it in the gym, your training partners are gonna fucking hate you. It's a horrible move, but it's so effective for MMA. I wouldn't reach for the can opener in a closed guard because you'd be vulnerable to arm bars, and Yair has incredible arm bars, but anytime we are head over head, or anytime we're in a high guard and we shoulder pummel inside, we get that can opener. What that's going to do is going to mean your opponent's going to have to open his legs to sort of relieve some of the pressure because it is horrible. And it's going to fatigue, if he wants to sit there in the can up, it's going to fatigue his core, it's going to fatigue his neck. It is doing damage to the body, sort of in the way I believe some sort of striking or heavy wrestling exchanges fatigue the body. And what it means as well is one way they want to relieve the pressure of the can opener is to actually grab the elbows and try to push them up, which opens the top guy up to throwing elbows, throwing strikes. So yeah, if you are an MMA fighter working from closed guard, working against a dangerous closed guard, I would highly recommend implementing the can opener. Kills people from closed guard. And then again, some of the other things we worked on, really the leg rides, the Turks, a lot of stuff Volks already does really, really well. Avoiding, so this sort of giving away the blueprint to Yair, trying not to take him down into his closed guard, which is dangerous, but a lot of the time using body locks. Volks has a huge technical advantage on the fence and in wrestling and in pure strength. So basically, he gets a hold of Yair, he's going to put him down. Yair was able to get up one time, but he was dragged straight back down to the ground. So I think if you watch the fight, the second Volks took him down, he felt the strength. You sort of felt a much different vibe from Yair, almost a fear. If you've been ragdolled by Volks, and I've personally brought in really good jiu-jitsu guys, really good judo guys, and they all get ragdolled by Volkanovski. So it's something you're not gonna be able to fully understand until you felt it yourself. But yeah, the grappling exchanges Volk had on the ground, super, super dominant. And the way he uses the leg drag position to finish the fight, just throw the legs across and then just land strike after strike on Yair. I thought it was maybe even a late stoppage, eh? Yeah. Yair didn't do anything for like 6-7 seconds. But yeah, that's sort of, the game plan works perfectly, really.
Dude, his fight IQ, Volk's fight IQ is fucking second to none, dude. It's like, he's so fucking smart. Like, yeah, he took him down, brought him to the cage, and also, like, brought him to the cage, like, where you guys were at. So you guys had, like, very easy, like, cornering there. Dude, he's so fucking smart.
Oh, yeah, he listens to everything you have to say. I mean, it's like, so Eugene and Joe are doing, obviously, most of the talking on the feet, but the second it hits the ground, they're saying, hey, Craig, take over. Obviously, you feel a lot of pressure. And that's something I say about Volks is anything you tell him to do, he's gonna do. So obviously sometimes I coach guys in jiu-jitsu and they're just gonna do whatever the fuck they want anyway. But with Volks, he actually does what you tell him to do. So if you give him some bad advice, that bad advice is gonna not go too well for you. But yeah, Yair's, he put him in the lockdown, held him there, but again, Yair will throw elbows from half guard. That puts you in a conundrum because one of the best ways to clear lockdown is to back up and sprawl out of it. But if you sprawl out of lockdown, you are actually going to be susceptible to elbows.
Range, yeah.
But the way Volks remained in the lockdown and still ground and pounded was perfect. I think Yair just didn't have, like as good as he is on the ground, just not good enough. There's a reason you don't want to be on your back in MMA. You can make it work against some opponents, you can make it work for a few opponents in a row, but you're going to take unnecessary damage. Nogueira probably had the best close guard for MMA, and you saw he would eat a lot of shots on the way to get in triangles or arm bars. So it's like there's a reason most people, you just have to be on top in MMA, and that's what makes jiu-jitsu skills so hard to translate, because in a grappling sense it's so much more fun and there's so many more options to do off your back. But the second strikes are involved, all those options are gone. So I say this with no disrespect to MMA grappling, but MMA grappling is simpler, and it's only simpler in the context that there's less things you can do. Yeah. Boxing, pure boxing, is way more complicated than MMA boxing. You know what I mean? There's less things you can do, but the way you put all those things together, the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, the Muay Thai, the boxing, the way you put it all together becomes complex, and that's where Volkanovski's the absolute master. And I would say Volk's probably one of the best cage wrestlers in the world, and you see his exchanges with Islam and the way he exchanged with Yair. Yair really didn't have much of a chance against the fence. Yair had a couple good moments at the start of the third, but then you saw Volk's time the hook. And again, there was a size advantage and a reach advantage to Yair. Volk's reach on the screen they put up is actually a lie, because it was measured when his elbows were held in, they fully extend, but now they just go to here. So his reach is even less than what it displays on the screen. But it's the way he explodes his hips forward that negates his opponent's reach advantage, and the way he uses the inside low kicks. But yeah, he caught that hook. He actually had a lot of problems with one of his elbows in the lead up to the fight. I know he didn't throw a single punch without his elbow taped for over a month.
Fuck.
So we were interested to see what would happen fight night, whether one kick to that elbow was going to cause a lot of issues.
Is that the surgery he's talking about?
Yeah, he's got to get the same surgery I believe Jacare had, where they clean out the elbow because there's a bunch of stuff, a bunch of bones, fragments, and like weird cartilage sort of jamming the elbow. I believe it's meant to be super painful. He was in a ton of pain in fight camp for it. But the guy's just it's just something else, you know? Like, man, some of the whining and whinging I hear from people that get injured in jiu-jitsu and shit, and they take fucking time off. It's like, this guy is dealing with so many injuries. He's 34, and he just gets in there. He finds a way to make it work. Baines, his physio, fucking does a very good job keeping the wheels from falling off, and his strength and conditioning coach as well. So it's just crazy. This guy's just so crazy. I don't see anyone beating him from here on out. I think the Islam fight, if they do that rematch, is going to be fucking dominant.
Yeah, I'm imagining if either that fight's next or they give him Ilya next, because that one seems to be one that he's interested in as well.
Yeah, I know when he talks about Ilya, super confident for the Ilya fight. I think Yair is a much more dangerous fight than Ilya. We haven't seen Ilya really off his back much. Obviously, Yair's win over Josh Emmett didn't age too well because of how Ilya handled Emmett. But yeah, Yair could beat anyone with the right kick combination and stuff like that. I think Ilya is going to have a horrible time with Volks. I think really Charles has said that he doesn't want to do October.
He wants to do November or some shit, yeah.
Volk wants to do get his surgery and fight Islam in Abu Dhabi, where Islam probably has some unspoken privileges that we've been told not to talk about, we can't talk about. But yeah, I guess we might as well go through the entire card, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about Pantoja Moreno.
Oh, dude, so good.
I actually thought Pantoja was going to get this done because I re-watched their second fight, and again, that was 5-6 years ago. But fuck, it was dominant. Pantoja kind of bullied him. The only thing I'll say is during the fight, Pantoja's a guy that looked incredibly gassed, but he just pushed through.
Oh, dude, he like blew his load in the first round, I think, yeah.
The backstage, we're watching it, and we kept thinking, oh shit, he's fading, but he just kept pushing.
Yeah.
Something me and Eugene have spoken about is how if you take a guy's back and you put him in a body triangle, that steals the round. The round's over because it's so hard to get out of the body triangle. Unfortunately, we saw that with Volk's Islam. And you saw that in this fight. Pantoja's so good on the back. In that final round when he secured the body triangle, Brandon Moreno couldn't get out. And I think it's interesting you see some similarities between what can work in MMA and what would work at the UFC Fight Pass Invitational. To get out of a body triangle, you need to constantly be moving. Obviously, you can stand up and try to peel them off against the cage, but the same strategies that are going to work to win an EBI overtime are going to work to get out of in an MMA fight too, because you can't just concede around like that. And the modern way I see to get out of body triangles, and that's something we worked on extensively for the overtime event, is you've got to defensively continually be moving, right? If I'm static and just hand fighting, the guy on my back is not going to get tired. We need to be constantly turning, constantly trying to misalign the hips, get a shoulder to the floor. We need to constantly be doing those things because when someone's moving aggressively and you're holding their back, it fatigues both your legs and your seatbelt grip. Or if you have double unders, like a body lock style grip. So something I would say MMA fighters need to take more risks when someone's on their back in the body triangle. Something we figured out this camp is we can basically control each other so as long as we don't go for the choke. Typically speaking, the second we go for the choke, we lose the back control. So you have to take risks in an EBI overtime, and I think in an MMA fight too. Moreno got out of Pantoja's back control once, very impressive, and if you saw it, it was when Pantoja was going for the choke. If you're statically hand fighting, they're probably not going to go for the choke. They're probably just going to keep the seatbelt. If you start to move your hips and start to turn, do turning style escapes, they are going to go for a shot at the choke, but if the hips are misaligned or shoulders to the floor, the choke's going to fail and you're going to get out. So it's interesting. I think body triangle escapes are something a lot of MMA fighters need to work on. One of the originals we saw, shout out to Tim Kennedy, if you go back and watch his match, his fight with Roger Gracie, he was able to escape Roger Gracie's back control. Obviously, if Tim Kennedy can escape Roger Gracie's back control, you, with the right technique, should be able to escape anyone's back control. And Pantoja stole that fifth round by just keeping it on. But again, we can't, in an MMA context, we can't just lose a round because of 5 minutes of back control, up to 5 minutes of back control. So we need to punish the guy that's just trying to hold the body triangle. And I don't think people realize how hard it is and how fatiguing it is to control a guy that's using turning escapes in a back control. Some people say a body triangle flattened out in MMA is going to be the worst position. It is going to be the worst position, but if we use momentum to roll through, they have a lot of trouble holding on to the body triangle. It's actually not as easy. I would say the best position for MMA is a double hook flattened out because we really can't move our hips there. But if you imagine a triangle, a body triangle, so imagine the shape of a triangle, when we flatten ourselves out and we roll through, the triangle gets blocked. So there's actually, you have a better ability to roll belly down to escape a body triangle, whether it's MMA or EBI overtime, than you do if the person has two hooks. So I think a lot of guys don't get out of the body triangle in MMA because they're scared of being bellied out. But what I believe is that if you allow them to belly you out with a body triangle, but you move through it, you'll see that it puts a lot of pressure on their legs and they can't follow you as easily. So I think you're seeing this in a lot of high-level MMA fights. Again, you saw it, Aljamain Sterling against Peter Yan. he was able to secure the body triangle over in 3 different rounds from memory, and Peter Yan just couldn't get out. Again, if you're too worried about being choked, you will never, ever escape a body triangle, whether it's EBI overtime or whether it's an MMA fight.
Yeah.
So I think that's an area for massive improvement, and then something that'll pay dividends in an MMA fight. Because again, if you have to hold on to a guy that's very hard to control, and you're in the offensive position on the body triangle, it's super fatiguing, because we're holding as tight as we can with the seatbelt to prevent them moving their shoulders. If I'm loose with my seatbelt, they'll get an inside shoulder to the floor. If I don't like back heel on my legs, apply pressure on my legs, they'll be able to misalign the hips. So to control someone with a body triangle is fatiguing, and I think that's obviously fatigue plays a massive factor in MMA. The aggressor in the body triangle shouldn't be able to use it as a rest position to steal around and ride the round out. It should be a position where they're trying to choke, or they're getting very fatigued trying to keep you in that position. And I think that was the difference in this fight. Something else that was interesting is a lot of the time the guys cut weight, they cut a crazy amount of weight. So I believe Volks had to cut 6 kilos 24 hours out, and that's huge. So what's that? That'd be over 12 pounds, which is a pretty damn decent weight cut. From what I've seen, featherweights, if you remember back to McGregor, like featherweights and lightweights seem to cut some of the most weight in all of MMA. They're the most sucked out guys I've seen. But what was interesting, the morning of the weigh-ins, I had to drop the sauna tents back, because the UFC lend out sauna tents to the athletes. I think they're pretty tight on it though. If you don't get it back by a certain time, $500 fine. So I dropped it back, and I actually saw Brandon Moreno driving himself out of the weigh-ins at the Apex. So the morning, so obviously we have the ceremonials in front of the crowd and the official morning of the ceremonials. And generally speaking, a guy's going to be so drained that they're going to have their team with them, or their coach is going to transport them, or the UFC is going to transport them. But I saw Moreno driving out with his girl in his Ford Bronco, and I was just like, oh wow, this guy must not cut much weight at all. Because if you cut a ton of weight, you definitely shouldn't be driving. You're probably going to crash on the way home. So you saw some of the way Pantoja took down Moreno. It was basically like a rugby tackle. He just ran through him. So I think Pantoja had a significant size and strength advantage over Moreno, and I think definitely played a big factor in that fight. But I mean, I don't know where we go from here. Does Moreno have to have a 4th fight? Like,
he's beat him 3 times, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because Pantoja's 3-0, but generally speaking, if you're a champ like Moreno, they're going to give you an immediate rematch. Moreno might be the only guy in MMA history that would have fought the same opponent 4 times, twice.
Figueroa and this guy. It was a split decision, so definitely probably run it back.
Yeah, I thought it shouldn't have been a split decision. I thought that was pretty decisive for Pantoja. But yeah, I'm not sure what they're going to do. But yeah, split decision.
Yeah, with the Mexican crowd there, I'm sure the judges were like seeing a little closer than it was.
Unfortunately, it was a bad night for Mexican fight fans. Yeah. The whole crowd was pretty pro Mexico. But yeah, I don't really have too much else to say about that one. It's just a good talking point to talk about the body triangles and the factor in MMA and how that contrasts with EBI overtime. But we'll talk about Dricus Robert Whittaker. I saw Dricus for the weigh-ins, and I was like, holy shit, this guy is fucking
That's a big guy.
Massive. And I remember we were talking about it with the team. I was talking about it with some of the guys on the team, and everyone counted Dricus out, but I was sort of thinking like, man, this guy's got the touch of death, and all the guys Whittaker's beat since he lost to Israel the first and second time, this guy's probably got the best puncher's chance out of all of them.
Yeah.
But that's sort of not what happened. He came out and he was able to use a wild, I won't get all Japanese and figure out what we'd call this fucking throw, but he was able to use a throw and then land ground and pound by playing back and forth between elbows and the DAS threat.
Yeah.
And he actually had a pretty technical DAS setup. Some people just die for the DAS, but what ends up happening is you can sort of elongate your spine and posture, and for a DAS to work, you have to collapse the top of the head. So you could choose to get the lock and then try to collapse the head, but what Dricus did, which was good, was he was collapsing Whittaker's head before trying to lock the dust. And then when he'd miss it, he'd follow it up with ground and pound. And he did a lot of damage in a short period of time once he got on top of Whittaker. And then, yeah, you saw in the second round, because Whittaker has the Taekwondo lunge forward, lunge back style, he got clipped as he was throwing a punch. And I remember Eugene was telling me that that's the worst time to be hit. So I think it was even like a jab that took Whittaker down, and then it was really bad from there. But yeah, a lot of people counted Dricus out because in a lot of his fights he always looks like he's about to lose. He has the B team gas tank, you know, but we didn't see any gas tank issues with this one. And now obviously they're going to try to book Dricus versus Izzy for September. We saw the stare down afterwards, very, very fucking intense. As a white man myself, I don't want to comment on any of the racial tensions. But yeah, I know Izzy loves this shit though. He loves this shit. He wanted Dricus to win. He wants a fresh challenge, you know. Yeah. Most people so he took the Pereira rematch immediately. Like he wanted it as soon as possible. He's like, let's do it again immediately. I know having a third fight against Whittaker, although the UFC would want it because it would have sold very, very well in Sydney with all the Aussie fans. I know it didn't really excite Izzy from my conversations with him as much. So yeah, he really believes he can manifest things, and he really wanted Dricus to win this fight. So he wanted it, and now it looks like it's going to happen. So it'll be interesting. Dricus has been talking a lot of shit, saying that if he gets Izzy to the ground, he's going to kill him. And I mean, considering what he did to Whittaker, I can see why he would think that. But having trained with Izzy myself, he is very, very slick on the ground, and he is a fan of grappling. He watches a ton of grappling, puts a lot of effort into really studying the techniques, shows up to training all the time. So it'll be very interesting to see on the ground. He has a much more dangerous guard than people expect. You saw Kelvin Gastelum, when Kelvin got him down, he was able to shoot a triangle very slickly. He's very technical and active on bottom, and if you're going to make bottom position work for MMA, you have to be very active. And we saw Whittaker really struggled to take Izzy down and keep him down in their second fight. So although Dricus did take Whittaker down, I think he caught Whittaker off guard with some sort of, like an unorthodox, something we never see. It was almost a headlock takedown, which is something that only works in women's MMA. But it was a headlock, and he kicked out the leg too. Yeah. So I mean, he is going to have a lot of trouble getting Izzy to the floor. But yeah, I don't think he's going to dominate him on the floor like he says at all.
Historically, not a lot of people take Izzy down to begin with. I feel like only Jan was successful or not. That's it, really.
Yeah, true. And Jan, basically, with a massive size advantage, was able to take him down. And Dricus, although looks massive for 185, I don't think he's anywhere near.
Yeah, he's no Jan.
Jan Blachowicz' size. Blachowicz probably would be 230 fight day for 205, and Izzy didn't put on any weight at all when he fought Blachowicz. But yeah, that fight is going to be fucking massive. That's going to sell a ton of pay-per-views.
You think they do that in Australia? You said September? Where's that card at?
Well, I mean, it depends. It probably depends on Dricus. Izzy's a guy that he sets a date and he picks it. They've announced Izzy for September, so I think it'd be entirely up to Dricus whether he wants to turn it around for 9 weeks.
Shit, yeah.
But that'll be very, very interesting. And we got to also talk about Izzy's teammate. I believe this was the next fight on the card. Yeah. Dan Hooker versus, what's his name?
The fucking Tarantula.
Oh, Tarantula, yeah.
What's his name?
I only know him as the Tarantula.
Fuck. I feel terrible here. I'll look it up.
You look it up. But, man, this guy has beaten a ton of Australians. Check his, he's beaten Josh Coulibaly, Jamie Malak. He's beaten a lot of Kiwis too. He beat Brad Riddell. So Dan Hooker was the last in a long line. So we hate this guy because of all of our people. He's fucking...
It's Jalen Turner.
Jalen Turner, yeah. Jalen Turner's beaten a lot of our people, the Anzacs, Australia and New Zealand fight team. So Dan Hooker is an absolute psychopath. He wanted this fight bad. He's an absolute character, but to go through it, Jalen did a ton of damage to his body. I remember at the after party, he showed me his stomach and he had all these red welts on it from those teep kicks to the body. Definitely hurt Dan Hooker to the body really bad. We come out in the second round. Something to put in perspective while we're watching the fight, Dan definitely paced himself in the first. Jalen Turner has got so many first round, especially sub 1 minute finishes. So it's like, obviously you don't want to go toe to toe when that's his strongest part of the fight. But even in the second round, Jalen kicked Dan in the head and he ate it. And it was massive. I remember Dan was saying me the afterbite, he goes, he kicked me in the head. I was upside down. I looked up. I saw 3 of him. And he's like, I decided to hit the one on the left, and that was him. And he rocks him straight after the head kick. And then, but in the second round, he kicked, he blocked another head kick, and it actually fractured his ulna. Fractured his ulna. So I remember I was speaking to the physio, and the ulna is what would allow you to turn. If you break your ulna, you can't turn your wrist. So he goes into the third, having absorbed a ton of damage to his body, having a broken arm, obviously been at a war, been fatigued, knowing Jalen Turner will have a second wind of energy at the start. Because again, Jalen's gas tank, I think, failed him because he's finished, again, you finished so many guys in the first round. He had a massive weight cut, he missed weight.
He missed weight, yeah.
Missed weight, Dan Hooker still took the fight, fucking savage, gets paid for it. I think he gets 20% of the purse. But you know he's going to come out heavy in that third round in the first minute. Dan's corner gave him a big motivational speech about eating body kicks, about pushing through. Hooker comes out, weathers the storm a bit in the third, gets him down. And then if you look, Jalen is overhooking the broken arm. So if you want to get out of an overhook from closed guard, it is annoying to do it. You're going to have to rotate your wrist. And Dan Hooker wouldn't have had that ability. We didn't even see him straight after the fight. They took him straight to hospital. I believe they took Jalen Turner to hospital too. But that was a crazy fight. I feel like if you break a limb in an MMA fight and finish it, that should be its own like bonus category. Yeah. And you saw Hooker after they were asking him if he's broken his arm, and he's like, just to scratch. The guy's crazy, actually.
You're a fucking dog, dude.
Crazy, and I'm so happy for Dan because he was took a couple of tough losses and he was on the out. Whereas he's a guy that almost finished Dustin Poirier. Yeah. So now he's right back in the mix. He tried to go to 145. I think Arnold Allen knocked him out. He's big for 145. 155 probably definitely his weight division. He is a tough guy. Probably the toughest human being. Yeah. One of in MMA, and just one of the craziest bastards.
He's been in some crazy fucking fights, bro. Yeah, the Dustin Poirier for sure is definitely like one of the best fights ever.
Yeah, and the body damage he took against Edson Barbosa and just kept coming, crazy. But yeah, Jalen Turner, I know like if we go back, I remember I spoke to Brad Riddell about Brad's loss to Jalen, and people were wondering what happened there. He actually got clipped with a knee to the body, and it did a ton of damage. I think it was a knee to the liver, and that's what led to such a sort of a weak grappling exchange from Brad Riddell following it up. Brad Riddell had a ton of hip issues too. He had a hip surgery. I believe he's making a comeback soon. But yeah, it was good for Dan to not only get revenge for all the Anzacs, but to get revenge for his teammate, Brad Riddell. But that was fucking wild. And then the other fight on the main card, Bo Nickal. Bo Nickal took on, what's his name, Val?
Like Woodburn or something?
Yeah, that's right. He took on Val. Val trains with Philly Fresh, and those guys over at down in Florida. I forget the name of the gym.
XL.
Yeah. XL. So Bo, I remember I saw Bo 30 minutes after his opponent pulled out. So it was funny. We were training at the PI. We would train about 7 p.m. every night. Sort of train similar time to when Volks would end up ultimately fighting. But we were in there. We started some training. Then Bo came out to talk to me. And he's like, "Oh, my guy just pulled out 30 minutes ago." And this guy was Trey San. Trey San was on Brian Ortega's team.
Yeah, your season, Ultimate Fighter.
Ultimate Fighter, yeah. Trey San was a pretty fucking crazy guy on the show, I'll be honest. Pretty scary lunatic on the show. I remember you'd try to have a conversation with him and he would just walk around the house being like, "I am the greatest fighter in the world." And then you'd say something else and then he'd just say, "I am the greatest fighter in the world." And then he would start talking to me about Bible verses and stuff. So I didn't connect with him. I don't think I had one conversation with the guy. But yeah, he was crazy. Another funny story, I don't know if this has been told, Andre Petrosky and him would train a bit, and I remember they trained grappling, and Andre put him in a heel hook, and he just refused to tap. And the coaches had to come over and be like, yo, tap, he's going to break your leg. And he's just not tapping. So Trayson, insane person. Like. But yeah, Trayson pulled out due to, I can't remember what he pulled out for. But I remember Bo talking to me about it. He's like, oh, they're going to offer me some opponents, but I always said I'd never take a last minute fight. I don't want to go into any fight unprepared. But obviously, money talks, opportunity talks, and he still decided to take the fight. Val had to cut a ton of weight. I'm pretty sure from the time he was notified about his about the fight, about his opportunity, he had to cut like 20 pounds.
Jesus.
So it was like, props to him for stepping in, but you saw Bo gets the knockout under a minute. Obviously incredible striking from Bo, but I definitely think you cut 20 pounds. That's your chin's gonna. It's not gonna
take
be
a fucking beating.
You're not gonna be in great shape for it. But yeah, Bo is incredible. I think he's gonna be definitely a contender very soon in the middleweight division. Any of the Penn State guys coming across to MMA are going to be a force to be reckoned with, just because they're absolute professionals. You know what I mean? Kale Sanderson runs such a tight ship.
No.
All those guys, RBY. I know Jason Nolf wants to get into MMA. Bo Nickal in MMA. Those guys are going to be a force to be reckoned with, because they're going to take training very, very seriously, and just do a lot of damage. RBY was on the Fight Pass Invitational show as well.
He looked really good, man. Really good.
He's real unorthodox, but he takes it very, very serious. So yeah, very impressive from Bo Nickal. I don't know what other fights we need to talk about. There were so many crazy ones.
Crazy one. There was that one Mexican guy who just like one punch knocked that guy out.
Oh yeah, that started the night scary for us, because Shannon Ross is an Aussie, and we saw Mexico get a victory early, and we were like, hopefully Mexico doesn't have any more victories tonight.
Dude, that was fucking brutal.
Mexico versus Australia in the main event. Volk gets it done. Unfortunately, Shannon Ross is probably going to be cut from that. But yeah, 12-second, one punch, knockout. I believe the other guy was a wrestler though, so you see like he did what Bo Nickal does so well, and he fakes the shot to an overhand. And then every wrestler is such a strong athlete. They have such power in the hands. But that was probably the most exciting UFC card I've ever seen.
And fucking Robbie, bro. Robbie Lawler.
Robbie Lawler retirement, yeah. We shared the locker room actually, so we got to speak to him briefly after his fight. Fucking crazy. We shared the locker room with him a few times. Fucking just a great guy. It's good for him to finish his career.
No better way.
Avenging the Nick Diaz knockout he suffered early, and then getting this fight. Yeah. Nico Price, really cool guy. I think Nico Price has 8 kids. I don't know if 8 kids in an MMA career is a great decision. I don't know if many people in MMA make enough money to afford 8 kids, but Nico Price hopefully comes back pretty strong. He typically has a pretty fucking good chin, so for Robbie to do that. How old is he, 41?
Fuck yeah, he's 41 plus, yeah.
41 plus, yeah, crazy.
Yeah, he just got some nice shots in there, like the clinch in there.
Yeah, just went crazy.
Uppercut, fucking hit run, temple out. That was there's no better way to go out, like retire.
Yeah, perfect.
That
Perfect. Yeah, more people should take a page out of his book, retire on a big win. Yeah. A big win like that.
Yeah, Connor said he'd be back by the end of the year, like Robbie will, but Robbie's like, nah, no shot.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he's coming back. But yeah, it was cool to see him straight after. It's cool to see some of the backstage stuff. So as soon as Robbie walks back in, Hooker straight to hospital, Robbie comes back in, and everyone in the locker room collapse, supports him. You know? So yeah, really cool. I think basically all MMA fighters respect Robbie Lawler. But yeah, that's probably it for the UFC card. Again, craziest fucking card I've ever seen in my life.
That was a sick card. A lot of finishes, a lot of good fights. Even that went the distance were just like fucking barn burners. So that was a good card for sure.
Guys, we're gonna end the podcast there. I've done enough ecstasy and cocaine in the last week to absolutely fucking fry my brain. This is Monday morning. I left Vegas yesterday evening. So the fact that we've made it this far, I'm impressed with myself. That's a bigger victory than the Felipe Pena pound-for-pound champion match. But yeah, we'll leave it there. If you want to sponsor the podcast, the email will be pinned in the comments, because no one understands what the fuck I'm saying half the time anyway. But yeah, that about wraps it up for episode 27 of the El Segundo podcast.
Thank you for listening to the El Segundo podcast. Don't forget, fuck Craig Jones.